Hello everyone, for this video, we will compare the EDCOM findings of 1991 in today's education system. We will find out if there's any changes and developments in education over the past 28 years. The EDCOM findings then and now. 1. Too little investment in education. Back then, EDCOM findings says that the government is not spending enough for education. But now, according to dbm.com or official site of Department of Budget Management of the Philippines and Rappler.com, Philippine education budget are increasing year by year, from 1.3% of the GDP in 1991 to proposed budget of 19.3% projected GDP of 2019 or 3.757 trillion pesos. The allocation of the education sector is distributed among the Department of Education, the Commission on Higher Education, state universities and colleges, and the Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. This means that the investment in education is no longer little. Because education is the top priority of our government. 2. Disparities in access in education. Back then, educational institutions favored the rich and the high-income families, whether it is formal or non-formal education. But now in Duterte's administration, they wrote a law about free education for all. Senator Paulo Benigno Aquino IV, one of the main authors of the measure, said that the law is primarily meant to benefit students who struggle to pay for their tuition and school fees and, in many cases, drop out because they cannot afford college education. The law will cover fees of students in 112 state universities and colleges, 78 local universities and colleges and technical vocational education and training programs. 3. Low achievement. Back then, pupils on average learn only 55% or even less of what must be learned. On the other hand, rich and high-income families got higher achievement records. But today, summer classes and remedial classes are used for the students to be able to learn the subject that they'd failed. 4. High dropout rate in less developed communities. Back then, dropout rates in elementary and secondary schools are high, especially in rural or less developed communities and among poor students. But now, according to PSA, the population of persons of school-going age who were not in school dropped to 3.6 million in 2017 from 3.8 million a year earlier. It means that the rate of dropout students are decreasing year by year. 5. Special needs neglected. Back then Muslim and cultural communities as well as special learners suffer from being neglected. But now, the government made a law, Indigenous Peoples' Rights Act of 1997, the security of their rights enshrined in the 1987 Philippine Constitution, and the abundance of international covenants and treaties which protect the rights of indigenous peoples. The government made a law to protect indigenous cultural community in discrimination. 6. Limited ECE and NFE services. Back then, the ECE and the NFE services are only acquired by rich families and only found in developed communities, but now, there are many ECE or early childhood education like public daycare centers and even public elementary schools offer ECE. NFE services here in the Philippines are improving year by year. One of the NFE services are the ALS or Alternative Learning System. 7. Schooling length and class interruptions, less quality. Back then schooling length are short and there are class interruptions that lead into less quality education. but in 1994 the government made a law for lengthen the school calendars from 200 days to 220 days. Which give us more class that correlates with more learning and more quality education. 8. Inadequate science and technology. Back then science and technology including modern innovations are inadequate or if not, unsuited to classroom instructions. Until now, we are inadequate in STI or science, technology and innovation. We improved but we are still inadequate. We don't have equipment for the K-12. Many classrooms doesn't have technology like TV, projector and sometimes even electric fan. We still need to improve in STI. The Philippines are ranked 74th among 128 economies in terms of overall innovation. 9. Ineffective values education. Back then, values education in schools is lacking and ineffective. But in 2002, basic education curriculum, then, grade 1 to 6, and first-fourth year high school required learning of the values as integral to the major learning areas or subjects. Values education focused on values processing, analysis, and broader application in real-life situations and for self-actualization. 10. Bilingual education affects learning. The use of Filipino and English as mode of instruction distresses the quality of learning. That is why mother tongue is implemented so the students can learn freely using their own language or dialect. 11. Manpower mismatched. The incompatibility in the supply and demand for educated and trained manpower or manpower mismatch are still here. There are a bit of development but still more graduates doesn't have job. 12. Irrelevance of education. Back then, education is found to be insignificant to the individual and social needs. Then K-12 program appear. In K-12 program, there are 3 tracks and each tracks does have strands. Every grade 10 students have the right to choose what strand they want in senior high school. Because of K-12 program, education become more significant to the individual because they have right to choose what they want, and then we can have enough manpower for the social needs because after they graduated in SHS they will have national certificate. It means that they can have a job even if they don't go to college. 13. Incompetent training and instruction. In EDCOM report in 1991, the inadequacy of trained and effective teachers was shown. Graduate studies are mediocre, limited and underdeveloped. Until now there are still inadequacy of trained and effective teachers because of lacking of teachers in different subjects. Too many teachers teaching outside their area of expertise. Because of that, the lesson become inadequate to students. 14. Ineffective and inefficient organization. Back then, the organizational structure of the education system is ineffective and inefficient because of messy planning of Department of Education, Culture and Sports. But the government divided into 3 organizations: the Department of Education, Commission on Higher Education and Technical Education and Skills Development Authority. The education in the Philippines become organized when they divided it into 3 organizations. That's all for today. Hope you enjoyed and learned something in this video. Thank you for watching.